Since the release of John Carpenter's Halloween in 1978, the people have long obsessed over the mass killer of 4 teenagers, a car mechanic, and 2 dogs. Obsession with the 21-year-old asylum escapee who sat in Smiths Grove Asylum for 15 years after murdering his sister Judith at the age of 6 has led to countless interpretations. Interpretations that scale from Michael Myers the person to being the human manifestation of evil through utilization of superhuman strength and a ninja's level of ability to sneak and strike with precision. My question is Michael Myers a person at all? Is the killer we see slaughtering humans and dogs actually a supernatural force from another world that has taken the shape of a man? Is that shape here to investigate and murder beings on Earth as summoned by energy caused by the evil torment of a young boy? As I delve into the shape's abilities, I'd like to ask you, the viewer, to leave your reality and embrace the suspension of disbelief. By that, I'm inviting you to join me in viewing Halloween as it is presented. We will be seeing the shape's behavior as if we are in Haddonfield, with it, seeing it with our own eyes. As I attempt to answer this question, I will only be looking at the original 1978 Halloween, written and directed by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. First, let's consider what human attributes Michael Myers exhibits. Michael Myers was at one point a boy growing up in the Midwest. You can see in his bedroom that he had typical toys of a young boy at the time. We see a couple toy trucks before we see a dartboard. We know that Michael remembers his sister Judith, so we know he has a human memory. When Laurie takes off his mask, you can see he has a typical face of an adult human male. Lastly, we hear Michael breathing throughout the film, so we know he's alive on the basic level. Now let's discuss the shape. The shape is the entity, force, or spirit that is using Michael Myers' body as a vessel. We first see it referred to as the shape in the ending credits of the film, which is a nod from John Carpenter that Nick Castle does indeed portray a shape and not a human being named Michael Myers. Carpenter has often referred to the shape as a supernatural force in various interviews.
So I added this slight supernatural edge to this guy. You know, sure, he's a person who escapes from a mental institution, and he comes back to revisit his small town, but he can't be killed, and there's a certain feeling of, you know, maybe he is not quite a human being. But this is somehow something bigger, which is Donald Pleasence's role in the film. He keeps saying, you don't understand what you're dealing with here. You do not understand. This is something, in a sense he's saying, this is like the devil.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
And in the end, it just becomes relentless. It just keeps going. But not relentless in terms of like a siege or an attack, but he's everywhere.
Jamie Lee Curtis, who portrays the hero, Laurie Strode, has alluded to this in several interviews as well.
When this very creepy, evil force descended on this small town in Haddonfield, Illinois. And they sort of settled the story. If you imagine a big high shot from space, coming down onto Haddonfield, going through the streets and landing in the window of that girl's bedroom, where she's singing to herself, I wish I had you all alone, just the 2 of us. I would hold you close to me, so close to me, just the 2 of us.
I wish I had you all alone, just the 2 of us.
So precisely what is the shape? Inhuman strength, sneaking, and attacking with force aren't the only techniques it exhibits. Let's start from the beginning. What transpires from the time Michael walks across the street, into the house, up the stairs, and stabs his sister to death offers clues to help us see what the Shape is capable of. As we famously find out at the end of this opening scene, we're actually seeing through the eyes of a small boy, which makes this point of view impossible. Notice Judith's boyfriend asks if they are alone. Her response is evidence that Judith has zero concern for her younger brother walking in on her having sex. This treatment would cause severe confusion to, as well as expose a young boy to seeing sex at a very young age. Additionally, there are primal feelings and instincts derived that will become activated by seeing one's sister in this situation. When the light in Judith's room is shut out, a startling musical cue occurs, showing something has awoken. As we'll later see, her bedroom is adjacent to Michael's, and she exhibits zero modesty or hesitation in the fact that her 6-year-old brother could walk in at any moment. The Shape enters through the back door into the kitchen, where it grabs a butcher knife. Notice what time it is on the clock above the stove. 9:20 p.m. As the Shape goes into the living room, there's a grandfather clock that shows 9:24 p.m. Now as the Shape ascends the steps, we hear the grandfather clock chiming 10 times, letting us know it is 10 p.m. It never becomes clear how or why this happens, but the shot is famous for having no cuts, and being one continuous shot from the street to Michael's bedroom. So there's intention and the discrepancy in time. It's very unlikely Carpenter would have left clocks in his shot composition if he didn't intend them to be noticed. The Shape enters Judith's bedroom from Michael's bedroom, looks at the bed where Judith had sex, and proceeds to stab her until she falls to the ground dead. Judith is completely overpowered by the inhuman strength of the Shape. A 6-year-old boy should not have been able to overpower a young adult of Judith's size. When the Shape approaches the front door, you can clearly tell that the height of the point of view at the door is not from where a young boy would be seeing. Michael's father rips his mask off, and we see our murderer for the first time. Michael's mother looks on at him in disappointment as she nonchalantly puts her hands in her pockets. Both parents exhibit body language of unhappily having to deal with an obligation as they look at their little boy holding a bloody butcher knife. Our point of view retreats into the air as if it is returning to space. The Shape was summoned by the energy in Michael Myers. The energy is a feral, animalistic, instinctual reaction coming from the id of a 6-year-old boy. The id being the part of the mind in which innate instinctive impulses and primary processes are manifested. Michael successfully escapes Smith's Grove Asylum and returns home to Haddonfield. The Shape has returned on Halloween, the same day as his first murder 15 years prior. The Shape sees a young boy named Tommy Doyle, who looks very similar to young Michael Myers, standing precisely where Michael stood after his first murder, also drenched in red. The color red, which is most often associated with passion, energy, war, danger, strength, and power. Notice the Shape sees Lori not listening to Tommy's warnings, meaning she could possibly be ignoring him. If we take Lori's actions out of context here, it does seem that she's ignoring Tommy, but what she's trying to do is comfort him. The Shape clearly has a guttural reaction to seeing this and takes action. leaving the house and standing gazing at Lori, breathing heavily.
All alone, just the two of us.
The shape follows Lori to her high school. Notice Lori is wearing a black shirt, holding a red pen, and writing on yellow paper. Black represents elegance, mental power, and sophistication, while red again represents passion, anger, and strength. Yellow represents the acquiring of knowledge as well as representing illumination. These colors highlight Lori as for the first time she lays eyes on the shape.
The idea is that destiny is a very real, concrete thing that every person has to deal with. How does Samuel's view of fate differ?
The shape directly gazes at Lori as she is in school, and Lori gazes right back at it. The stark contrast here is palpable. These shots present us with what's called binary opposition. Binary opposition is a technique of strictly defining and setting two theoretical opposites against one another. The shape is gazing on at Lori through the shades and surrounded by greenery and trees. This is similar to how an insect or animal would see its predator gazing at it in the wilderness. This is where we start to see what the shape is truly taking the shape of. What that shape is that of a feral beast stalking its prey. Listening to the teacher's lecture here is very important in describing the nature of what we're seeing. The teacher is lecturing, the book ends, but what Samuels is really talking about here is fate. You see, fate caught up with several lives here. No matter what course of action Collins took, he was destined to his own fate, his own day of reckoning with himself. The idea that destiny is a very real, concrete thing that every person has to deal with. How does Samuels' view of fate differ from that of Costain's? Lori? Lori's response is accurate. Lori responds, Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion, where Samuels felt that, well, fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water. Lori's teacher confirms, that's right, Samuels definitely personified fate. In Samuels' writing, fate is immovable like a mountain. It stands where man passes away. Fate never changes. So again, what is the shape? When fate is being discussed, who are we supposed to expect fate to be catching up with? Is it Lori or Tommy? As we'll see in the next scene, fate is very much what Lori told us it is, like a natural element. It is catching up with all of them. Most importantly, however, as we will find out, fate is indeed catching up with everyone, including the shape. In the next scene, we get the complete story of what exactly the shape's motivation is and why it exists. The shape checks in on Tommy as school's ending and witnesses him having bullies tease him about the arrival of the boogeyman, something Tommy deeply believes in. Tommy was gripping a large orange pumpkin that he was excited to carve later with Lori. The color orange represents warmth, excitement, enthusiasm, health, and youthfulness. Tommy is tripped and falls on top of his pumpkin, crushing not only the pumpkin, but himself as well. The shape gently grabs the chain link fence, as if it is grabbing prison bars. Notice how the shot is composed so that the shape is in the foreground, watching Tommy, who appears much smaller in the background. The fence represents the trap that Michael Myers is in while the shape gazes on. Also noteworthy is the theme of greenery in the middle ground of this shot. Green represents the power of nature, tranquility, equilibrium, growth, and harmony. This shot is composed so that we are in the back seat behind bars while the shape is driving us. It is intentional that we, the viewers, are now seeing from where Michael Myers was supposed to be sitting. This visually allegorical perspective puts us where Michael Myers is, trapped while the shape is in control. Now that the shape knows Tommy is safe, it is time for it to fulfill its purpose. Find, stalk, and execute those responsible for the abuse. Only what the shape isn't aware of is that fate awaits it just as much as it awaits its prey.
Cheers to learn in the morning. The game is in the afternoon. I have to get my hair done at 5, and the dance is at 8. I'll be totally wiped out.
I don't think you have enough to do tomorrow.
Totally.
Now again surrounded by greenery, we see Laurie with her friends. Laurie's friends Annie Brackett and Linda Vanderklok walk home together. The character set has expanded, and we now have two dumbfounded, irresponsible, careless teenage girls associating with Laurie.
15 minutes. It totally never showed.
It can be seen how moral and upstanding Laurie is. I'd like to note immediately that this is in fact not the typical final girl trope. It is true that Laurie has a higher moral standing, but she also is seen smoking weed and showing vested interest in boys just as her immoral counterparts. Laurie is a female survivor of a line of victims that includes male humans as well as dogs. Also, Halloween does pass the Bechdel test, as multiple established female characters have conversations that don't pertain to men.
I have a place for that. I forgot my chemistry book.
So who cares? I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book and my French book and, well, who needs books anyway? I don't need books.
Laurie's concern quickly goes from concern over her textbook as she now lays eyes on the shape yet again. But this time, she is out in the open and vulnerable. Annie provokes the shape by shouting at it. This prompts a moment where the shape's eyes are metaphorically presented as red, complemented by the green surroundings. This shot is composed to show red eyes staring at prey in a nature setting. I'll turn up the warmth and saturation just a bit to highlight what I mean. Notice next here the music is raised slightly in frequency, just like hair would stand up on someone's neck as they realize they're being watched and a deep sense of fear sets in.
God, can't you take a joke? You know, Annie, someday you're gonna get us all into deep trouble.
Totally.
Linda shows how oblivious she is, exclaiming "totally" yet again. The girls continue on with their banter, but Laurie's concern grows as she realizes they are being stalked by a predator.
Oh, come on, Annie. Bob and I have been planning on it all week.
Sleep, listen to Linda scream.
As the girls walk away, diminishing into the background of the shot, our perspective stays put, and the movement of the trees and casted shadows paint a picture of serenity for a moment as the shape has gone away. Notice in this next shot, the shadows cast by the trees are now absent. They don't reappear until we are reaffirmed that the shape is still gazing on at the girls. As the girls decrease in number, Laurie lays eyes on the shape once again, only this time much closer, and nothing stands between them. The shape is gazing on at its prey similarly to the way a cat would, calmly and silently positioning itself, studying its prey, and waiting for the exact right moment that it will pounce.
I don't see anything. The guy who drove by so fast, that one you yelled at? Oh, subtle, isn't he? Creep. Laurie, dear. He wants to talk to you. He wants to take you out tonight.
As Laurie pensively approaches, knowing that there is danger, we will get a view of how far the shape would have had to run in order to be gone. The shape has the ability to teleport or vanish into thin air. This, similarly to the change in time in the opening scene, is never explained, leaving us in mystery as to what kind of predator the girls are really dealing with.
I don't. I think you're wacko. Now you're seeing men behind bushes. Well, home sweet home.
Laurie being down to herself in the presence of the shape is foreshadowing of her wish being fulfilled, of having it all alone, just the two of them. And as we'll see, that is where fate will catch up with the shape. Laurie arrives home and enters her bedroom. There are several important factors to this scene. The white curtains are blowing vigorously in the wind as Laurie steps over to her window. There is a red heart in the corner of the room. The presence of the passionate red color, now being in the shape of a heart, insinuates Laurie's loving and moral nature before she looks out of her window to see again gazing back at her, the shape. Once again, we witness the shape teleport away, or perhaps turn invisible. It's not clear or explained how it has this ability. Laurie was again gazing directly back at the shape, but the fact that something just vanished right before her eyes terrifies her.
Hello.
Let's consider the presence of the color white here. The color white represents purity and innocence. For instance, white robes have historically been worn to show spiritual and/or sexual purity, something both Michael Myers and Laurie Strode are inferred to have in common, that being the lack of sexual understanding or experience. Laurie is looking down upon a male figure gazing at her. The look on her face while looking at the shape is one of confident defiance, before it vanishes, terrifying her. With this common trait in mind, note the fact that Laurie is above the shape, looking down at it. Laurie is in the high angle of the high-angle shot. High-angle shots in film infer a dominance over the lower subject. Oftentimes, the lower subject in a high-angle shot is meant to garner sympathy or cause the viewer to lament the subject. Yet we still feel fear for her safety due to the fact that the shape seems to be able to appear anywhere and now could potentially be invisible. Now, before we move on, take a look at the picture up on the wall. It is a poster of Belgian painter James Ensor's self-portrait of a painter with a flowered hat. The portrait seems to grimly gaze at Laurie while she is alone in her room. Additionally, Ensor's self-portrait is famous for its portrayal of not only his deep glare at the viewer, but the fact that it is painted with an oval, meaning Ensor is looking into a mirror in the painting, creating a duality to the character of the painting. This reflects what we know about Michael Myers and the shape. James Ensor's work was famous for being grotesque and being a great influence of expressionist and surrealist art. Major subjects in Ensor's works are carnivals, masks, puppetry, skeletons, and allegorical content meant to derive deeper hidden meaning in the eye of the beholder. Even more interestingly, Ensor was the son of a documented drunk father and chronically busy mother who ran a souvenir and curiosity shop. Ensor spent much of his life living with only his sister, a theme very similar to Michael Myers, and in Laurie's bedroom, the portrait's glare is just as cold and intent as the shape's.
I wasn't.
Annie picks up Laurie in a blood-red car with blood-red interior. Annie is also highlighted with red attire, while Laurie now is wearing royal blue colors. Royal blue promotes a sense of calm, order, authority, and control. Darker blue colors are also associated psychologically with suppression of emotion and reserved behavior. Laurie and Annie are smoking weed together, while behind them, unbeknownst to them, is the shape following them. The car radio is playing Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. This song's lyrics and meaning pertain greatly with Annie and Laurie. Outside of the obvious labeling of the shape as the Reaper, the song deals with the inevitability of death and the belief that we should not fear it. When Blue Oyster Cult's lead guitarist, Buck Dharma, wrote the lyrics, his intention was to bring about What would happen if he died at a young age, and if he would be reunited with his loved ones in the afterlife? Again, it is easy to see these themes as directed towards the fate of the girls, but considering what will eventually happen to the Shape, it could be that the Shape is the one fearing the Reaper. Annie and Laurie see Annie's father at a hardware store that we find out is where the Shape stole his mask and some tools. Annie is rude to her caring father, who isn't aware that this is the last time he will see his daughter alive. Now I'd like to briefly touch on the character of Sam Loomis. Loomis was Michael Myers' psychiatrist for 15 years before Myers escaped the asylum. Loomis's presence in the film is a signal to anyone who will listen that Michael Myers is not a human being, and rather is a manifestation of evil coming to Haddonfield to bring death. Loomis clearly cared deeply for the young boy Michael Myers, but realized that that boy was gone, and an evil force has taken over. Sam Loomis has the same name as Marion Crane's boyfriend in Hitchcock's Psycho. Marion Crane is played by Janet Leigh, who is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. Loomis is the one who discovers that the Shape has been feasting on a dog, is the only one completely aware of what is happening. There is no better way to present Loomis than to show his famous monologue explaining what has become of Michael Myers.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Now with Halloween night set in, and the girls isolated, the Shape moves in on its prey. Annie and Laurie talk on the phone from across the street where they are babysitting. Note that Annie has a red color palette surrounding her, while Laurie contrastingly has royal blue and a warm, well-lit color palette around her. Behind Annie is a man's suit, which is placed to look like a headless figure looming over her shoulder. A German Shepherd walks into the kitchen and begins to growl and bark viciously at the back door of the house. This is the first of a few hints that Carpenter leaves us as to how the Shape is to be interpreted. As Lester barks at what we know now is the Shape lurking around outside the house, Lindsay Wallace is shown sitting in the other room watching The Thing from Another World. The Thing from Another World is a story about an alien that crashes into Earth, that takes the shape of a human being, kills, eats dogs, and stalks people before murdering them. A very similar set of aspects to the Shape. Tommy Doyle looks out the window across the street at the Wallace house. We see from Tommy's point of view and see a haunting, motionless image of the Shape gazing back at Tommy, as if it knows Tommy's watching. I'd like to remind for a moment that what we're literally seeing is someone dressed as an astronaut seeing the Shape outside of their window. There's a devilish glow illuminating the Shape. The Shape seems to be frozen the way a cat freezes so it can remain hidden. Tommy runs to Laurie and gets her to look out the window, but when she does, the Shape has vanished, and along with it, the glow where it stood has also vanished. Annie spills popcorn oil on her clothes and changes into a man's button-up shirt. This makes Annie's appearance very revealing and inappropriate for the young girl she is babysitting. Not to mention, Lindsay also hearing Annie talking about all the things she wants to do with her boyfriend Paul over the phone. The Shape is seeing all of this and begins to close in on Annie. Lester meets his fate, and we are immediately reminded of the reference to The Thing from Another World, as the television is shown playing the title credits, Carpenter making the reference blatantly obvious with this. I want to draw some attention to a very subtle detail left in the shots here around the characters the Shape is hunting. There's a shadowy figure of a cat behind Laurie where she was reading King Arthur to Tommy. The part of King Arthur Laurie was reading while the cat was lurking behind her was where Arthur is standing up to and fighting a knight. The cat seems to be a wild, feral cat, such as a jaguar, but it is hard to tell due to its placement in the shadows of the background. It seems to be staring at Laurie from behind her shoulder. We see the figure most prominently when Laurie is proclaiming to Tommy that she isn't about to let anything happen to Tommy while discussing the boogeyman, a promise Laurie lives up to. While Laurie is carving a jack-o'-lantern with Tommy, Annie leaves Lindsay alone to go out to a shed, half naked, in the backyard to wash her clothes. As Annie is setting up her load of laundry, we see the door slam shut, as if it was pulled by an invisible force. It could be the wind, but it happens again after Annie witnesses the shape teleport away right in front of her.
Hello?
It's clear that Annie sees the shape, because she verbally addresses it. When it vanishes away, she thinks it's a trick. The shape, while invisible, reaches in and slams the door again, this time locking Annie inside. Lindsay is still watching the thing from another world. The scene she is watching is when the crew is out investigating a crashed UFO. Interestingly paced is the character from the movie saying, "We gotta figure out the shape of this thing," followed by a clearly stated exclamation, "Holy cat," another reference to a cat while defining the shape. Carpenter is further hinting here at the subtext of the supernatural and the inhuman aspect of the shape.
Almost a perfect...
It is. It's round.
We finally got one.
We found a flying saucer.
Yeah. Almost a perfect... It's round. We finally got one.
We found a flying saucer.
Annie is locked in from the outside of the shed, and the shape is gazing in at her, watching with curiosity. Annie turns around quickly, and the shape vanishes again. The shape's ability to teleport or turn invisible is being used more than ever at this point as it closes in. Annie attempts to climb out the window, but ends up getting stuck, meaning she is completely vulnerable to being attacked. Lindsay is shown again, and we hear another conversation from the thing from another world.
Doctor, where do you figure it's from? I don't know, Mr. Scott. Oh, from this planet? I doubt it. Well, then do you think that the answer is from? I don't know, Mr. Scott.
Hello?
From this planet?
Hi, Lindsay. This is Paul. Is Annie there?
Lindsay's statement here confirms that it wasn't the wind that closed the door, and someone deliberately locked it, confirming the shape's invisibility.
You locked yourself in. I know.
That it can happen to anyone.
Sure, stuck in a window.
Yeah, but I've seen you stuck in plenty of other positions.
My parents are gone.
Oh, that's fabulous.
The shape is standing at the door, watching as Annie loudly discusses sex with Lindsay just in the other room by herself. Observe the devious looks on Annie's face, while the shape's eyes are fixed on her, as she ignores a young child. The shape teleports away yet again. It is clear that the shape wants its prey to be alone and trapped before it attacks.
That's not true. I think about lots of things. Now, why don't we not stand here talking about them and get down to doing them?
The TV gives some foreshadowing to the shape's upcoming techniques, while we see a clip from another movie that will give us the most clear idea yet from John Carpenter as to what the shape is.
Why are you sitting here
The
with
clip
all
is from the
lights
movie
on?
Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet is a story about a faraway planet being visited by a crew of astronauts to investigate the fate of a group of scientists left there decades prior. In very brief summation, the Forbidden Planet the crew visits is the home of mad scientist Morbius and his daughter Alta. Members of the crew start being murdered by an invisible force. This leads to the climax of the film, which ties into what Michael Myers' fate became with the evil force, the shape taking him over. The scene shown on the television while Annie is talking to Lindsay is of footsteps appearing in the dirt by an invisible monster as it approaches another victim. This is exactly what we've been seeing the shape do while stalking Annie. That is, moving in using invisibility to close in on its prey.
Do you hear something? Like what? Like a sort of big breathing. No.
Also similarly to the Shape, the invisible monster can be heard breathing heavily.
He's dead.
He was warned, and now he's paid. Let him be buried with the other victims of human greed and folly.
The theme of humans paying for their behavior is brought up as Morbius comes to the realization of what the monster outside truly is. A monster of the id, brought to life by Morbius's extreme distrust of human beings and his overprotection of his young daughter.
She must be prevented.
Morbius, what is the id?
Young man, my daughter is planning a... She'll be terribly punished.
What is the id?
Id. To describe the elementary basis of the subconscious mind.
Monsters from the id.
Huh?
Monsters from the subconscious.
This dialogue in this scene describes what we've been seeing in Halloween. The Shape is a monster of Michael Myers' id, a monster of the subconscious that has come to execute those responsible for his abusive childhood.
But like you, the crowd forgot one deadly danger. Their own subconscious hate and lust for destruction.
The beast. The mindless primitive.
He knows it's your other self.
In the climax of Forbidden Planet, we witness the monster of the id turn on the one who created it.
We're all part monsters in our subconscious. Sent your secret id out to murder them. But then when you thought we were threatening your little egomaniac empire, your subconscious sent its id monster out again. More deaths, Morbius. More murder. And
Annie takes Lindsay over to join Laurie and Tommy. Notice as Tommy, again dressed as an astronaut while a monster of the id roams around outside, lets them in, and the shadowed cat stares at Annie as she enters. Annie is now alone and getting ready to go out to her car. Notice that she is shown looking into a mirror but does not have a reflection, showing an emptiness to her character. As Annie heads out to her car, we see that the car has fogged windows, as if someone or something has been waiting in the car, breathing heavily. The Shape finally pounces after getting the exact right moment to do so, and brutally murders Annie. Tommy sees the Shape carry Annie's lifeless body into the house and continues to believe the boogeyman is out there.
Hey, it's totally dark. Hey, Annie! Annie!
Linda arrives drunk with her boyfriend. They barge into the house and take one of the bedrooms to have sex in. Meanwhile, Laurie is finishing up carving a jack-o'-lantern and acting as a responsible, loving adult with Tommy and Lindsay. The Shape lurks in the house, waiting for the right moment to pounce. Linda demands that Bob get her a beer. Watch as he enters the kitchen. There's a large painting of a cat in the hallway, curiously staring at Bob before he is murdered by the Shape. As Bob grabs beer, the Shape, while invisible, opens the door to draw Bob towards it. As Bob goes to investigate, the Shape teleports inside and leaps out of the direction that the painting of the cat was in the house, murders Bob, pinning him to a door. Notice the Shape's inhuman strength, lifting Bob up with just one arm and stabbing with enough force to pin Bob to the door. A man of the shape's size should not be able to not only overpower a young adult of Bob's size, but especially wouldn't have this inhuman strength. The famous head tilt that the shape does as it is admiring its kill is very similar to the way a cat curiously admires and plays with its prey after it has hunted and killed it. After the shape aggressively strangles Linda to death with a phone cord, Laurie has heard enough. Notice the placement of Laurie saying, "I'll kill you if this is a joke." It isn't Linda who hears this, it is the shape. Laurie knows something is wrong, and is ready to head off and put an end to it. Now, before Laurie leaves to go to war with the shape, she checks on Tommy and Lindsay. This is similar to a soldier saying goodbye to their family before leaving for war. The shot where Laurie's face is present in the foreground and kids in the background shows where her head is. By that I mean Laurie's priority is protecting the children, something the shape also is attempting to do. The theme of war can be derived from the fact that the Vietnam War had just ended, and a common theme in America was the permanently emotionless soldiers that returned home after the war ended. Laurie represents the warmth, love, and responsibility that the shape doesn't know exists. Laurie assures that the shape finds out. Laurie's appearance has now changed. Her typical professional conservative attire is now slightly more revealing and relaxed. This shows how Laurie is honest and isn't perfect in the light of the upstanding, always moral trope character. Laurie now casts a great shadow, highlighting this duality. The shadow represents her putting her loving and nurturing self on hold as she approaches what she knows is a dangerous situation. Laurie's walk to the house where the shape awaits is very similar to a soldier's march to war. Laurie enters the house and makes it very clear that she is there to put an end to whatever is happening. Listen as she threatens the shape.
Funny now, cut it out. I'll be sorry.
There's a fiery glow coming from one of the bedrooms, where we will see the shape's message to us all. The fiery glow alludes to Laurie opening the door to hell, where she will meet the devil itself. Laurie shows only slight fear in this hellish situation. Laurie finds Annie's dead body with Michael Myers' sister's headstone. This shrine is a message from the shape that everyone will meet the same fate as Judith Myers for what they've done. The jack-o'-lantern stares back at Laurie with a gaping smile. Laurie finds Linda and Bob's dead bodies also, before finally, the shape and Laurie face off. The shape appears from complete darkness and attacks Laurie. For the first time, we see the shape fail as it misses, only stabbing Laurie's arm. Laurie falls over the railing and down the steps. Now the high-angle shot is flipped and pits Laurie in the low angle and the shape looking down at her. The shape punches a hole through a door, but Laurie is locked to get to her. Laurie then very similarly punches through glass to open a door that the shape had locked to keep her in. Laurie runs to a neighbor's home and pounds on the door. The neighbor hears her, but turns the lights out and doesn't help her. This is a nod to the parental neglect of the characters in this film. Notice the cat figure now glares at Laurie as she gets back into the Doyle house, along with a well-defined shadow. Laurie sends Tommy upstairs and tells him to lock himself in the bedroom. Laurie realizes the window is open and the shape likely is inside the house. Instead of running, Lori stays by the window and arms herself.
Please stop. Please.
This is a conscious decision by Lori to square up. After stabbing the shape in the neck, Lori's face is shown, and we see the monster within her has come out, as she now holds the shape's knife. The shape is now being confronted with humanity protecting itself, and is not strong enough to fight back. Lori feels she has defeated the shape and goes upstairs right away to check on the children. She explains to them that she has killed the boogeyman. Tommy famously responds,
How? I killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
The shape is now walking more like a human than it ever has been as it approaches the top of the steps, instead of being invisible or teleporting. What the shape sees is a teenage girl comforting children. It gives the shape pause, and it seems the shape is now more human than ever. Lori locks the children in the bathroom and makes it seem she has jumped off the balcony, but instead of actually doing that, she stays and hides in the closet. The shape doesn't fall for this, and ends up smashing through the closet door, but seems to want to look at Lori more than attack her. This is likely because it is confused, having seen her showing love towards the children. Lori twists a wire hanger into a weapon and stabs the shape in the eye with it. This causes the shape to drop its knife. Lori grabs the knife and, with the look on her face of pure rage, stabs the shape directly in the heart. The shape falls, appearing to be dead. Lori's first impulse is to get the children to safety.
Unlock the door. You understand me? Go do as I say.
The children run out of the house screaming, and in doing this, alerts Loomis, as he has been out searching for the shape. Lori decided to stay with the shape just in case it gets up once more, and the shape makes the mistake of doing so. This time not grabbing a knife, and instead, grabbing Lori and attempting to strangle her. However, this time, and for the first time, the shape isn't able to overpower its prey. It seems the shape has been humanized, and to further the point, when Lori exposes its face, it is not the face of a beast, but it is Michael Myers. His face is boyish and has the look of pure terror on it, as he realizes he was wrong about humanity. Notice the image of the two loving parents looking on at him as he looks at Lori. Michael has realized that he was wrong to summon the monster of the id as he fumbles with his mask to hide behind it. Loomis approaches with a gun and empties the entire clip on him before he falls off the balcony. Lori confirms the inhuman nature of the monster, saying,
What's the boogeyman?
Loomis confirms,
It was.
Loomis goes to look down where Michael had fallen, only to find that he is gone. The shape's final move was to vanish and retreat back into nature, or to whatever world it came from, after being slain by humanity.